Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm excited to answer your questions about our Artists at Sea and Birth of Opportunity programs. Before we get started, I thought I'd share a couple of examples of some stories from these programs. Here we have a picture of Half-Light, an exhibit by Ellie Hannon and Connor Ashley at the Maitland Regional Art Gallery in New South Wales, Australia. Connor and Ellie participated in our 2021 Australian Mesophotic Coral Examination Expedition and felt inspired to create a body of work based off of their experience. And next up, we have a picture of our most recent Birth of Opportunity participant, Mark Fontanas Ortiz, who participated in our most recent expedition at the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. Mark is a microbiology PhD at Arizona State University and is Puerto Rican. Falkor 2 sailed in and out of San Juan, Puerto Rico for this expedition. Studying microbes living on hydrothermal vents was a long-time goal of his, and we were really honored to support that goal. With those examples, I am eager to get into some questions.
Thanks so much for that, Hannah, and for those examples. I hope everyone had time to watch the video on how to apply for ship time as an artist at sea or Birth of Opportunity participant. And we're now here to answer your questions about these opportunities. Just a few logistical announcements before we dive into your questions. Please use the Q&A icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen to submit questions to us, and we'll get to as many as we can over the next 30 minutes. Closed captioning has been enabled, and you can turn it on or off using the closed caption icon also found at the bottom of your screen. Lastly, when you joined, you heard that this session was being recorded, and that recording will be posted to the Schmidt Ocean Institute website in a few weeks, and you can share with your friends or colleagues or revisit for any content that you may have missed. We'll give our participants just a bit of time to start typing in their questions and start with a few that were submitted before the session started. So Hannah, we all watched the video about how to apply, but we had a question about for the Artists at Sea or Birth of Opportunity, do you have to be from the region where Falkor 2 is operating in? And what is really considered the region? I know those boxes in our 10-year expedition plan are fairly large. And so what do we consider the region when we're trying to include local participants?
Yeah, that's a great question, Allison. So our priority will always go towards artists from the region where Falkor 2 is operating. And the region it's a pretty general term for the part of the world where the ship will be. So for 2024, we will be along the west coast of South America. So if you are from Latin American countries with the preference for that west coast of South America, that will sort of be what we consider the region. However, if you are an artist from a Latin American country, be that South America, Central America, or Mexico, or the Caribbean, you can also be considered sort of part of that regional artist with, again, preference towards people living along that coastline.
Excellent, thank you. And do you have any outreach plans in place to reach out to artists in those regions, or is it more of kind of a proposal process where we're asking artists to apply to us?
It's a great question. So I would say it's a mix of both. So we work with local community groups. We have local connections who help us identify artists, but we also accept proposals from artists from those regions.
Excellent. And how will these artists be selected? So once we have some artists from the region and also proposals, how are we going to choose which of those artists or Births of Opportunity actually get to sail on board Falkor 2?
Yeah, so the Schmidt Ocean Institute communications team selects the artists, and we select artists based off of their fit for the expedition and take in consideration their reach, the interest level that they have in the expedition, their location, and if we feel like the proposal is a good fit for any given expedition.
And I think you just mentioned this a little bit, but including the Births of Opportunity also, but How do artists at sea or the Birth of Opportunities apply or get chosen for a specific cruise? How does that matching process work? And are the scientists that are conducting research involved in that process?
Great question. So generally, no, the scientists are not involved in the process of selecting artists for an expedition. They can recommend artists to us that they feel might be a good fit for our program. When it comes to applying for a given expedition, if you see an expedition that you feel you might be a good fit for, you can definitely mention that in your application. But generally, the communications team at the Schmidt Ocean Institute is working to match artists that we feel would be a good fit. Also, we have to take in consideration scheduling. So part of that matching process is also just looking at if you were available to go to sea for 30 days in the month of July.
Excellent. Thank you, Hannah. I'd like to switch a little bit and talk about the Bursts of Opportunity. This is a bit of a change from the way Schmidt Ocean Institute brought people on board prior that weren't necessarily associated with the science expedition. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how this differs from the student opportunities that SOI previously had on board Falkor, kind of what's changed and what's new about this opportunity now.
Yeah, so it's definitely a little bit of a different program now. So Birth of Opportunity is now what was formerly our Student Opportunities program. We will still consider students for this program. That's definitely a group of people who can participate in the Birth of Opportunity program, but we wanted to broaden the program to reach other peoples who we feel the expedition might benefit from or who might benefit from the expedition. So examples could be marine park managers from the region, local traditional knowledge holders, storytellers, and policymakers, basically anyone who feels who we feel and who also feels could really benefit from the expedition.
And could artists be included in that? Is there a situation where someone could apply for both the Artists at Sea and the Birth of Opportunity space on board the vessel, or are we trying to keep those a little bit separated?
I would say there's a little bit of separation. You are more than welcome to apply for both programs. There is limited space, so you can sort of exist as a bird, like for artists to spread out their art and create their art on the ship. So we have to limit the amount of artists on one time. So if you are a Birth of Opportunity participant, and we also have an Artist at Sea, you might find that you might not have the space to conduct art in the way that you would like to, and we might have some more expectations for you to assist in outreach in a different way. So yes, so you can apply for both programs. There might be different expectations for you dependent on the program that you are operating under.
Excellent. Could you talk a little bit more about the activities or the roles and expectations that the Birth of Opportunity participant will have? And if there's anything to add about what the Artists at Sea will be doing as well, that would be great.
Yeah. So the Birth of Opportunity splits their time between assisting the science team and assisting in outreach. And so what that could look like with assisting in outreach would be narrating our live stream in the language of the region where we are operating in the primary language. So for example, we will be around South America for the next couple of years, so narrating our live stream in Spanish. It could also look like writing blogs, assisting in our Ship to Shore program, and leading Ship to Shores for community groups in the region in the native language. It could also look like helping with some translation potentially. With the Artists at Sea program, you are also, again, helping with the science and learning from the scientists, and then working on your art in the process. There is an expectation that you will donate at least one piece of art to our traveling exhibit by the end of your expedition.
Thanks, Hannah. And we have a question about life on board the ship for both of these participants. Could you talk about if we're able to accommodate artists or Berths of Opportunity participants with any disabilities or mobility issues that may be a challenge on board the vessel?
Yeah, so I would say that there are some aspects of the vessel that might be challenging for someone with mobility issues. We do have an elevator, but there are certain decks that that elevator does not go to. And there are quite a number of doors and sort of ledges that people have to step over. So I think it is possible to be on the ship with mobility issues, but also being mindful that there are some it's not as, there are some areas that might be challenging for somebody with mobility issues.
Thank you, Hannah. And while we're on the topic of life on board Falkor 2, we have some questions about dietary restrictions and what the meals are like on board. Could you talk a little bit about our wonderful chefs on board Falkor 2?
Yeah, so we have an amazing team of chefs on board Falkor 2 who are able to accommodate any dietary restriction. If you're vegan, if you're gluten-free, if you are dairy-free, yes, any sort of diet can be accommodated. I would also like to add, just to kind of with that, we also accept remote artists at sea. For example, we had Taiji Terazaki last year as a remote artist at sea. So if you have significant mobility challenges, you can apply to be a remote artist at sea.
Thank you, Hannah. Yes, we aim to be very welcoming, and the artwork that he created is amazing. So I think you can have some wonderful art and connection with the scientists created remotely as well. Well, just in this brief time, we've gotten everyone really excited to apply to these opportunities. And so we have some questions about whether SOI is currently accepting applications for either of these opportunities, and if not, when will we be?
Yes, so we are accepting applications for these opportunities. As previously mentioned in the symposium, we have this 10-year plan. If you go and you look at the regions where we are operating, you are an artist from one of those regions, you are more than welcome to submit an application for an expedition that might not be happening for another 5 years. Beyond that, we are accepting applications for Berth of Opportunity and Artist at Sea for a few of our expeditions through the end of this year. I would say look on our website. We will be opening up that application process soon with more information on how to apply.
Great. So stay tuned, everyone. I know you're excited and it's coming soon. We have a couple of questions about what types of artists are we looking for? Can photographers or literary artists or choreographers perhaps come on board?
Yeah, so it's not just visual artists who are welcome to come on board. We do accept musicians, choreographers, dancers. The one place where we might be which might be challenging to apply under would be photography and videography specifically. We have our own professional videographers and photographers on board the ship. So your artwork would have to differ significantly from the people who are a part of our team.
Excellent. We have a few more questions. We touched on this briefly at the beginning of the session, but maybe we can dive a little bit deeper into where some people that are interested might be able to find our 10-year expeditions map. To answer that question, I believe Lisa put a link to that in the chat, but also what we're considering local. You talked about that a little bit, but if they see we'll be in their community maybe in 5 years or more towards the out years on our 10-year expedition map, how should they handle that? Do they just wait? Should they apply now? and just a little bit more information. We have some people really excited to participate in years that are a little bit further out currently.
Yeah, we're really happy that you're enthusiastic and excited to apply and are already thinking about this. I would say now is a great time to start making contact with us and letting us know you're interested. And yeah, that just you're more than welcome to apply. It just might be a few years before we bring you on the ship.
Yes, perfect. We have a question about if two artists can come together and create a piece of artwork.
Yes, we do have the space to accommodate two artists working together. We would just have to read the proposal and see if we feel like the two of you would be a good match.
Excellent. We have a question about maybe someone that's a little bit younger and not as experienced as a artist that has many years under their belt. Do recent college graduates from art school, are they eligible, and would they be considered for an Artist at Sea opportunity?
Yes, definitely. If you are, especially if you're from the region. I would say if you're not from the region, we do have more of a preference for artists who have a wider reach and who can bring attention to the expedition.
Excellent. And could you talk a little bit about maybe give some examples in the past or just talk a little bit more about how the art that has been created kind of relates back to the scientific research? I know we've had some really close relationships built between artists and scientists on board Falkor, and we're looking forward to having those relationships built on board Falkor too also. So could you talk a little bit about that connection?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's such a wide range of how we remain connected with the artists who have been on the ship and where the artists go from, like where the artists take their art after the experience. Some of our artists are now solely focused on the ocean. Again, as previously mentioned, Ellie and Connor felt so inspired that they did an entire show based off of their experience. We do have the traveling exhibit that has been shown all over the world. Recently, it's currently at the Port of Seattle. And before that, it was shown at the Ciência Viva in Lisbon, Portugal, as a part of the UN Ocean Conference. So that art gets displayed all over the world every single year. And we often, some of our alumni artists will come for those shows, which is really, really lovely to see them all in person again. It keeps, I would say, snowballing, and it's really exciting to see where artists take their art after this experience and to see their continued involvement and to see that they maintain relationships with the scientists and that we have this whole community that's being built around this program.
Yeah, I agree. It is really great to see. Switching back to the Birth of Opportunity, which is, as Hannah mentioned, a little bit newer for us this year. How will we be selecting those participants? If you could talk a little bit about that, and will the scientists be involved in choosing those Births of Opportunity participants?
It's a great question. So again, scientists can submit recommendations that we will consider. Those recommendations still need to send us a proposal, but generally it is the communications team who is deciding the Birth of Opportunity participants. And that is a one-page proposal describing how you feel you will benefit from the expedition and also how the expedition could benefit from your participation as a Birth of Opportunity. And again, more information on how to apply will be on our website shortly, very, very soon.
Excellent, thank you. And Hannah, one of the things I know you personally were very excited about on board Falkor 2 was more space for the artists to spread out. And I think this would also be applicable to the Bursts of Opportunity, just having more space for them to really experience the science. Could you talk a little bit about some of the spaces on Falkor 2 and how they enable these participants to really be embedded in the science taking place, but also have some dedicated space for creation of their own?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we currently don't have a dedicated space for the Artist at Sea program, but we are working on that. That said, we have 8 amazing configurable lab spaces that are really quite huge. And we think that at this moment in time, the artists will be able to set up in a way that they'll be right in the action with the scientists while they're processing their samples in this community space. But both sharing their art and learning from this and having the scientists learn about their process and their artwork while also simultaneously learning from the scientists about their work.
Excellent. I think everyone is very excited to come on board Falkor 2 for these opportunities. We have a question from someone that is not from a particular region where Falkor 2 has said they'll be operating over the next 10 years, but is very interested in participating in one of these opportunities in a specific region. Could you talk a little bit about maybe someone that's not from that region but has a strong connection to or is looking to learn more and participate, how we can include them in these upcoming expeditions?
Yeah, that's a great question. You are still more than welcome to apply, and we will consider your application. And if we feel like you would be a good fit, then we might move forward with your application.
Excellent. We have a question from an artist about using images or sounds that is captured from the scientific research taking place and maybe how they could incorporate them into the art, which I think we have done before, but maybe a little bit broader, kind of zooming out. How do artists respect copyrights and the rights of the scientists that come on board while still creating some unique pieces of work based on the research taking place?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when it comes to the imagery and the sounds, we have an amazing video capture system and audio capture system on the ship that the artists on board will be able to access. We are at Schmidt Ocean Institute very much a huge core value of ours is the open sharing of information. And so all of that visual footage is licensable for both educational and nonprofit uses. And so the Artists at Sea program is definitely that image. There's no worry about copyright for artists to be able to access and use that imagery. That said, we would hope that you would use that imagery in a way that isn't just the standard image, that you would use it to inspire your and work on your art piece. In terms of scientists, I think, Allison, you can probably talk a little bit more about this. We have joint project agreements where the scientists do agree to the open sharing of their data on the ship. And so in terms of being able to access samples, I mean, scientists are going to need to take their samples home, but you are more than welcome to examine them and look at them and utilize them in your work.
Yeah, that's a great summary. Thanks, Hannah. I don't have anything to add. That was great. You talked a little bit about all the possibilities for what an artist could create on board Falkor 2, but we have a question about if there are actually any limitations. So if there's stylistic limitations, if there's anything on the ship or in our policies that might limit what an artist can create.
Not right off the top of my head. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's
That's a hard one.
limitation
Yes.
to what you can create on Falkor.
The world is your oyster on board Falkor 2 in terms of creating art. Excellent. Kind of a combo question for Artists at Sea and Berths of Opportunity, but we have a question about how we keep the network, so to speak, kind of alive and connected after a ship is over. So I know that you and the communications and outreach team do kind of have an alumni network that you keep in touch with. Could you talk a little bit about that for both Artists at Sea and Berths of Opportunity participants?
Yeah, we have a mailing list. We will alert our artists or past alumni when their work is being shown, because again, part of the Artists at Sea program is donating at least one piece to our traveling exhibit. We do keep in touch with our Berth of Opportunity participants just to see where they are at in their career and in their life. For example, Melissa Anderson was our first student opportunity back when it was student opportunities. And she was just recently back on Falkor 2 for the first inaugural expedition to the Mid-Atlantic Ridge as a scientist, part of the science team, now a professor at, I believe, at a university in Canada. I would want to say either Victoria or
University of
Toronto.
Toronto.
Toronto. And that was really exciting. So yeah, I think we just keep in contact. We love hearing from our artists when they're displaying work that's inspired by the ocean. We continue to promote their work after the expedition. It's a really lovely relationship that continues on.
I agree. It is really great. And we use social media a lot for that. But I think it's also great to have this artist network that you still see at events and see their work all around. So that's really great. We have maybe time for just one or two more questions, but we had a question about if museum curators would be eligible for an Artist at Sea participation.
That's a great question. I don't see why not. Again, if you are more than welcome to apply, and if we feel like you'd be a good fit, then we will match you with an expedition.
Excellent. And you just set me up great for the very last question, Hannah, about setting up for an expedition. We have a question about what types of disciplines are on board Falkor 2 as part of the scientific team, and kind of what type of multidisciplinary projects we have on board. Maybe you could just give one or two examples of the scientists that our Artists at Sea or Berths of Opportunity participants might encounter when they're on board.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it varies from expedition to expedition, but the amazing thing with Falkor 2 is we are able to be even more multidisciplinary now and bring even more different kinds of scientists on to the ship. Well, you might encounter geologists, biogeochemists, biologists, technologists, engineers, mapping experts. There's so much different science that takes place on the ship, and it's really lovely to see them all work together on a given project to explore and learn about our ocean.
Great. Well, I think that is a perfect way to wrap up the session, Hannah. Thank you so much for answering all of our participants' questions. And I personally am very excited to see the art and the learning that comes out of these expeditions on board Falkor 2 with all of our Artists at Sea and Berth of Opportunity participants. Coming up in just a little bit, Hannah will be back to answer your questions about how to participate in a ship to shore. So please join us if you're interested in joining a ship to shore. And then later today, she'll be back answering more questions on the Artists at Sea and Berths of Opportunity. So please check our Symposium website for all of those details. And Hannah, before we close the session, I'll let you have the last words on how Artists at Sea and Berth of Opportunity participants can come on board Falkor 2.
Thanks, Allison. Thank you all for joining and your fantastic questions. I look forward to reading your applications.